Hey, Captain Logos here, preacher at large, teaching the word and inspiring 3 minutes at a time. Hey, this morning, I want to talk about the mind in this session. And Brother Dub Williams, he spurred this session on this morning because he made a post which made me drive into the word and just dive in deep real quick because he always has great things to say. And if you're friends with him on Facebook, go over and look at his post this morning. It's a great post that adds some history, some science, and some Bible all mixed in together. But we don't talk about the mind very much in our teachings, in our preachings, in our Bible study, but the Word of God talks about the mind a lot, right? A quick search of the Hebrew and Greek senses for mind, the senses, the words that are translated, they may come out different, but they're translated, but they mean the same thing. The sense is the same thing. So like heart, I just know in my heart. Well, that's really what you're saying is you know in your mind. And so when you look at the senses, there's literally over 300 times the mind is used in the Bible. Now that's a lot. That's more than most subjects. So why is the mind so important? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. It's the impetus for everything you do and say and who you are. Look, you can't do anything without first thinking about it except for reflex motions, right? You can't come to Christ unless you think about it, right? You can't sin unless you think about it, right? It comes into the mind first, then we think about it. It's not sin yet, but then we dwell on it, and then it possibly could become sin because we dwell on it with our mind, right? All right, you guys know what I'm talking about. You see something you shouldn't see on the computer, right? And you linger a little bit longer than you should. Yeah, that can turn into sin real quick if you don't get off that stuff, right? And that's why Paul says in 2 Corinthians 10:5, casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ, right? Paul says, take those thoughts that are not of God and basically crucify them to the obedience of Christ so that you dismiss the thoughts that are negative, that are not of God, and you then fill your mind with the things of God. Look, there is a war going on for the mind in the spiritual world. This war is also in this present fleshly world. Man, this war, why do you think the colleges, right, are teaching all this junk? There's a war for the mind, and if they can get your mind, just like they have, it's only taken them a generation. Now there's a generation that does not know God because they've been told there's no God. Right? There is a war going on. In Romans 7:23, it says, but I see yet a law in my members, warring against the law of my mind, and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin, which is my members. Look, there's this war going on. There's a Galatian war going on, a flesh against the spirit and a spirit against the flesh, right? So you cannot do the things that you would. Galatians 5:17. There's also a war going on in the spiritual world to control people's minds and indoctrinate them, right? But what's the word of God say? Don't be conformed in Romans 12:2. And do not be conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is good and acceptable in the perfect will of God. So the only way to know what's good, what is perfect, and what is acceptable is by the will of God through your mind, knowing that. And don't be shaken. 2 Thessalonians 2:2 says, not to be soon shaken in mind or troubled either by spirit nor by letter as from us, as though the day of Christ has come. Look, junk is going on, right? Just like right now. So back in that day, they were saying, hey, the coming of Christ is coming. He's coming now, but he didn't come, and people were being shaken, saying, why didn't he come? Right now, there's junk going on and all sorts of stuff happening. People saying, where's God? What's going on? Don't be shaken, right? Which is the whole reason for 1 Corinthians 2:16, which Brother Dub posted at the end of his post. For who has known the mind of the Lord that he may instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ. And if we take every thought captive like Paul tells us to, dismiss the junk that's not of God, we truly have the mind of Christ. We truly can be a force to be reckoned with. Now, that's just a primer. I'm going to do a deeper study on this, and it's going to have to be a longer one someday. But get your face in the Bible.